December 11th, 1941. 1 p.m. Reich Chancellery, Berlin. Adolf Hitler stands before the Reichstag and declares war on the United States of America. 4 hours later, in a secure conference room deep in the Reich Chancellery, General Major Friedrich Fromm, Chief of Wehrmacht Armaments, spreads intelligence assessments across the mahogany table. Around him sit representatives from Abwehr Military Intelligence, the Armaments Ministry, and the Wehrmacht High Command. They're here to brief the leadership on what Germany faces. Gentlemen, Fromm begins, tapping a folder marked with American production estimates. We must assess the timeline for American industrial mobilization. An intelligence officer stands. Major Wilhelm Scheidt, 34 years old, specialist in Allied economic capacity. He spent the last year analyzing American industrial potential. Based on their previous war experience, Scheidt says, we project 18 to 24 months minimum before significant American production reaches operational theaters. He references World War I. America declared war in April 1917. Chaos followed. The War Industries Board cycled through multiple chairmen. The first suffered a nervous breakdown. The second quit in frustration. Not until January 1918, 9 months into the war, did Bernard Baruch restore order. And by then, too late. As British Prime Minister Lloyd George noted bitterly, the greatest machine-producing nation on earth failed to turn out the mechanism of war after 18 months of sweating and toiling and hustling. Almost all American-produced war materiel arrived in France after the armistice. Scheidt continues. The Americans face multiple obstacles. First, their economy remains depression-weakened. Second, their population is isolationist. 2/3 opposed involvement even weeks ago. Third, their military is minuscule. The U.S. Army in 1939 had barely 15,000 vehicles. He pauses for effect. We assess they require 12 to 18 months to retool factories, establish supply chains, and train workers. Then another 6 to 12 months to achieve meaningful production volumes. Earliest significant impact, late 1943. Around the table, heads nod. The assessment seems reasonable, conservative even. Fromm looks satisfied. By late 1943, we will have secured victory in the East. The Americans will arrive to find the war decided. The meeting concludes. The officers file out. The assessment is typed, copied, distributed through Wehrmacht command structure. 2 years minimum. That's the number that matters. It would prove to be one of the most catastrophic intelligence failures of the Second World War. May 29th, 1940. Washington, D.C. A cramped office in the Federal Reserve Building. William S. Knudsen sits at his desk with a yellow legal pad, doing mathematics. He's 61 years old, 6'3", 230 pounds. Danish immigrant who arrived in America at age 20 with $30 and a technical education. Worked his way from bicycle repairman to president of General Motors. Along the way, he revolutionized mass production at Chevrolet, making it America's best-selling car. 3 weeks ago, President Roosevelt asked him to join the National Defense Advisory Commission. Knudsen left a salary of $350,000 a year, plus bonuses that brought his total compensation over $500,000 to work for free in Washington. $1-a-year man, they call him. He doesn't care about the title. He cares about the numbers on his yellow pad. At the top, he's written, Lead Time. Knudsen knows something the German intelligence officers don't know, something most American military planners don't fully understand. Mass production takes time to get started. The Army has a fantasy they call M-Day, Mobilization Day. The theory goes, pick a date, issue orders, and miraculously, everything happens. Men drafted, reserves called up, factories making rifles and machines, trains steaming for ports, with cargoes of men and materiel. Knudsen was there for World War I. He knows M-Day is nonsense. He remembers standing hip-deep in the Rouge River in 1918, laying pylons for docks where Henry Ford would build Navy sub-chasers called Eagle boats. He remembers producing Liberty engines for Glenn Martin's aircraft. He learned then that mass-producing war materiel requires the same principles as mass-producing anything else. Break products into maximum interchangeable parts. Arrange parts to come together in continuous assembly lines. Drive costs down through volume. Simple in theory, complex in execution. And it requires lead time. On his yellow pad, Knudsen writes, 18 months. 12 months to build new plants and retool old ones. 6 months for full conversion to war production. That's his calculation. Based on experience. Based on understanding how production actually works versus how planners think it works. He reviews current American industrial capacity. Steel production, 28 million long tons. Less than half of 1929 peak. Still more than any other nation, but the industry operates at its lowest capacity in 20 years. Aluminum. Alcoa and Reynolds produce maybe 180 million pounds annually. They'll need 750 million minimum for aircraft production. Shipbuilding. 4 vessels per month across all American yards. They'll need hundreds per month. Machine tools. Adequate for peacetime, catastrophically insufficient for war. And automobile plants. Detroit's massive facilities that produced 3 million cars in 1939. They'd need complete retooling to build military trucks with specifications requiring minimum speeds, fuel standards, and off-road capability that civilian vehicles never attempted. Knudsen looks at his 18-month estimate. He circles it twice. That's the timeline. If they start immediately, if they coordinate perfectly, if business and government cooperate seamlessly. 18 months from serious mobilization, start to meaningful production. Outside his window, Washington goes about its day. America remains at peace. France is collapsing. The Dunkirk evacuation will begin in 3 days, but America stays neutral, which gives Knudsen something precious, lead time before the war starts, if they use it wisely. He closes his notebook and heads to brief the president. September 2nd, 1940. Warren, Michigan. Empty farmland 9 miles north of Detroit. K.T. Keller stands in a muddy field, watching surveyors mark positions. Keller is president of Chrysler Corporation. Short, blunt, brutally efficient. He's built his career on production innovation, assembly line optimization, vertical integration, inventory control. Now he's building a tank factory, not converting an existing plant, building a new one from scratch on 113 acres of farmland. The Army approached Chrysler in June about tank production. The U.S. had exactly 2 tanks in inventory that were less than 10 years old. Everything else was World War I surplus or hand-built prototypes from government arsenals. Keller studied the problem. The Army wanted thousands of tanks, wanted them quickly, wanted them cheap enough to produce in volume. You couldn't hand-build thousands of tanks. You had to mass-produce them, which meant designing tanks for mass production, interchangeable parts, assembly line construction, standardized components. The Army was skeptical. Tanks required precision engineering, quality craftsmanship. How could assembly line methods work? Keller's answer, give me 6 months and I'll show you. Now, standing in the mud, he watches his vision begin. The Detroit Tank Arsenal will have 1.5 million square feet under one roof. Machine shops, forge facilities, heat treatment units, final assembly lines. It will employ 10,000 workers, running 2 shifts. Ground breaks today. Keller's engineers predict first tanks rolling off the line by April 1941. 7 months from groundbreaking to production. Impossible by traditional standards. But Keller understands what the Army doesn't. The automobile industry has spent 30 years perfecting rapid production scale-up. They know how to design for manufacturing. They know how to organize workflows. They know how to train workers quickly. You just need to apply the principles. 300 miles east, in Cincinnati, Fred Geyer faces a different challenge. Geyer is 53 years old, president of Cincinnati Milling Machine Company. Soft-spoken, formally dressed, he golfs in 3-piece suits. Educated at Williams College. Reads Latin and Greek for pleasure. Doesn't drink or smoke. Unlikely profile for a manufacturing titan. But Geyer understands machine tools better than almost anyone in America. In the 1930s, he made several trips to Germany, still the world's center of machine tool excellence, and returned disturbed by what he saw. Persecution of Jews, frantic militarism, massive arms buildup. Geyer predicted war was coming. Starting in 1938, he doubled his plant size, installed new foundries, added office buildings, all funded from profits. Geyer despises debt. Now May 1941, Geyer sits in the Hotel Cleveland for the Machine Tool Builders Association annual meeting. Bill Knudsen finds him there. "Fred," Knudsen says, settling his bulk into a chair, "I need machine tool production to double, redouble, and redouble again, inside 1 year." Geyer blinks. "You're crazy." "Probably," Knudsen agrees. "Can you do it?" Geyer does mental calculations. Current production, 110,000 machine tools annually. Knudsen wants, 180,000? 200,000? "When do you need them?" "Right away," Knudsen says, dead serious. Geyer knows Knudsen well enough to know he means it. "We'll do it," Geyer says. And they do. Geyer's factories, and dozens of others across the country, begin running 3 shifts 7 days a week, installing new equipment, hiring workers, expanding facilities. By 1942, Cincinnati Milling Machine produces a new machine tool every 17 minutes, around the clock. One of Geyer's proudest achievements sits on his factory floor, a massive gun boring machine. He saw similar equipment in Germany in the 1930s, and, in defiance of Nazi export restrictions, secretly bought one, smuggled it out piece by piece through Switzerland and Italy, reassembled it in Cincinnati. This machine will bore the 16-inch gun barrels for the Iowa, New Jersey, and Missouri. The pieces are moving. Knudsen launches a nationwide survey identifying every machine tool made in America in the last 10 years. 21 types are critical for defense production. His deputy, Mason Britton, tracks down idle tools, used equipment sitting in factories, available for war production. By late 1941, the machine tool infrastructure is ready. Meanwhile, the Educational Orders Program begins. Small contracts to revive a moribund American munitions industry. Goodyear manufactures gas masks. R. Ho and Company develops recoil mechanisms for anti-aircraft guns. General Electric makes 60-inch searchlights. Winchester produces the Springfield Armory's new M1 rifle. And Knudsen's old company, General Motors, receives orders for military trucks. The orders are tiny, theoretical, but they're training a generation of engineers and managers in war production, The system is building. In October 1940, Knudsen calls Detroit's automakers together, makes a simple request: start making parts for airplanes. The response is extraordinary. Not because companies are patriotic, though some are. Not because they fear Hitler, though some do. Because they see opportunity. Government contracts, guaranteed payments, high-volume orders, work for idle factories. American business sees profit in preparedness. By December 1941, before Pearl Harbor, the mobilization is already underway. Saginaw Steering Gear receives a contract for 280 machine guns by March 1942. When March arrives, they deliver 28,728. How? They redesigned the manufacturing process. Found inefficiencies the Army didn't know existed. Eliminated unnecessary steps. Innovated new methods. One example, the Army specified elliptical ventilation holes in machine gun barrels. Had to be drilled one at a time. Saginaw's engineer, Bud Durfner, asked, why elliptical? If they were round, he could drill 3 in one operation. Army tested it, approved it. Soon Durfner had a multi-spindle drill cutting 10 at once. Production exploded. This is the secret Knudsen understands. America's strength isn't just big companies. It's the subcontractors. Timken, a major axle manufacturer, starts making armor plate. Hudayale Hershey, specializing in shock absorbers, manufactures 30 caliber machine guns and finds improvements the Army thought impossible. The network activates. By December 1941, America isn't mobilized yet, but the machinery is in place. The foundation is laid. The 18-month clock is ticking. December 7th, 1941. 7:55 a.m. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The first Japanese bombs fall. When the attack ends, 8 battleships are sunk or burning. 2 cruisers destroyed. 4 destroyers damaged. 203 Americans dead. December 8th, Washington, D.C. The White House. President Roosevelt addresses Congress. A date which will live in infamy. America declares war on Japan. December 11th. Germany and Italy declare war on the United States. The timeline just compressed catastrophically. December 16th. The White House. Roosevelt summons Knudsen. Knudsen arrives with production reports for 1941. The numbers are impressive. 19,290 aircraft, 50,684 aircraft engines, 97,000 machine guns, 3,964 tanks, 9,924 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns, more than anyone predicted a year earlier. Proof the mobilization is working. Roosevelt barely glances at them. Bill, the president says, I need those numbers accelerated. He hands Knudsen a sheet with new targets. 60,000 planes in 1942, 45,000 tanks in 1942, 75,000 in 1943, 20,000 anti-aircraft guns, 8 million tons of merchant shipping. Knudsen studies the numbers. The 60,000 aircraft figure is double what his team projected. The tank numbers are more than 10 times 1941 production. Can we do it? Roosevelt asks. Yes, sir, Knudsen answers immediately. He'd figured 45,000 planes of all types was possible. Roosevelt just added 15,000 more and called it 60,000. For propaganda purposes, surely. To frighten the Axis. But Knudsen doesn't argue. He promised Roosevelt 18,000 planes in 1941 and delivered 19,290. Time to exceed expectations again. Back at his office, Knudsen faces his team. Babe Meigs, his aircraft production chief, is livid. I am astounded, Meigs says, at the scheduling of 60,000 airplanes and 125,000 for next year. I presume this is done for propaganda purposes. Every expert told him 45,000 was an all-out, almost impossible figure to shoot at. How are Roosevelt's numbers remotely possible? Knudsen pulls out his yellow legal pad, shows Meigs the calculations, the 18-month timeline, the network of suppliers, the machine tools in place, the converted factories, the trained workers, Everything they built in 1940 and 1941, that was preparation. Now comes production. We promised 18,000 and exceeded it, Knudsen reminds Meigs. We'll exceed this too. The clock starts. Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. 18 months from now, June 1943. But Knudsen's private calculations suggest they might hit peak production earlier. 14 months, maybe 15, early 1943. Can they actually do it? The American industrial machine is about to answer that question. January 15th, 1942. Plymouth Assembly Plant, Lynch Road, Detroit. The last civilian automobile rolls off the line. Workers gather to watch. It's a Plymouth Special Deluxe. Blue paint, chrome trim. The kind of car that symbolized American prosperity just weeks ago. Now it's obsolete, a relic. The assembly line that built it will never build another. Tomorrow, this factory starts making trucks for the Army. One worker has taped a sign to the windshield. Until total victory, we dedicate ourselves to the objective. When better war goods are built, Plymouth workmen will build them. Workers applaud as the car reaches the end of the line. Then the night shift begins. Overnight, engineers and mechanics swarm the factory floor. They rip out machine tools, the specialized equipment for stamping fenders, assembling transmissions, installing electrical systems for civilian cars. Outside, trucks wait with new machine tools, equipment designed for military production, heavier presses, different welding rigs, assembly fixtures for truck chassis instead of car bodies. By morning, when the day shift arrives, the changeover is complete. This scene repeats across Detroit, across America. General Motors stops civilian production at multiple plants. Starts war production 29 days later. 29 days from the last Chevrolet to the first military truck. Ernest Kanzler coordinates the transformation. Kanzler is elegant, cosmopolitan, more comfortable at the opera than on factory floors. Former Ford executive, lawyer by training, now running the Automotive Council for War Production. He has 2,000 member companies. But the big players matter most. Ford, GM, Chrysler, Packard, Studebaker. Kanzler's genius is letting them do it themselves. No government dictates, no centralized control. Just coordination, information sharing, mutual support. The Automotive Council becomes a massive collaboration network. Companies share innovations, pool resources, solve problems collectively. When one company finds a better way to manufacture something, they tell everyone else. It's voluntary cooperation on a scale never seen before. And it works. At Buick, workers cheer as the last civilian car comes down the line. Then they get to work on aircraft engines. At Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal, K.T. Keller's facility, the first M3 tanks start rolling off the line, on schedule. 7 months from groundbreaking to production, exactly as Keller promised. The innovations flow upward from unexpected sources. Timken is making armor plate now. They're experimenting with design improvements the Army never considered. Hudile, Hershey, manufacturing machine guns, finds that soldiers complain the aluminum handles break easily. Hudile engineers find a sturdier substitute, saves aluminum too. At Saginaw Steering Gear, Bud Dorfner's multi-spindle drill innovation becomes standard practice. March 1942, production 28,728 machine guns instead of the contracted 280. The subcontractor network is performing miracles. Across the country, materials production surges. Aluminum, 25 million tons in 1940, hits 40 million in early 1942. Headed for 70 million by year's end. Steel production climbs steadily. Foundries expand. New facilities open. Jesse Jones, head of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, loans billions for plant expansion through his Defense Plant Corporation. 1 out of every $10 spent on war effort from 1940 to 1945 flows through Jones's agencies. He finances airplane plant expansion, creates a massive synthetic rubber industry virtually from scratch, critical because Japan now controls East Indies rubber sources. The infrastructure builds exponentially. Machine tool production, $110,000 in 1940. Already hit $185,000 in 1941. On track for even more in 1942. February 1942. Ypsilanti, Michigan, Willow Run. Ford's massive new bomber plant takes shape. It will be the largest factory under one roof in history, 3.5 million square feet, more than 67 acres of workspace. The goal, mass-produce B-24 Liberator bombers using automobile assembly line techniques. Critics say it's impossible. Aircraft require precision engineering, hand-fitted components, skilled craftsmen. Ford's response, watch us. Charlie Sorensen, Cast Iron Charlie, Knudsen's old rival, drives the project. He's convinced aircraft can be mass-produced just like cars. He'll prove it, eventually. After struggling through 1942 with design changes and engineering problems. But by 1943, Willow Run will hit its stride. Across the country, similar stories multiply. Henry Kaiser's shipyards in Richmond, California, revolutionize shipbuilding. Traditional shipbuilding, assemble vessels piece by piece at the dock, takes months per ship. Kaiser's method, prefabrication. Build entire sections in workshops, deck houses, bulkheads, hull plates, then assemble them with cranes at the dock. Liberty ship construction time collapses. By late 1942, Kaiser's yards are building ships faster than anyone thought possible. The record will eventually be 4 days, 15 hours, 30 minutes from keel laying to launch. 4 days for a 10,000-ton cargo vessel. It's not just speed, it's volume. Spring 1942, production numbers start accelerating. Every week, more factories convert, more workers train, more equipment installs, more supply chains activate. The 18-month clock ticks down. But the real production explosion is still coming. Lieutenant General Knudsen, he accepted an Army commission in January 1942, begins his inspection tours. Over the next 3 years, he'll travel 250,000 miles, visit 1,200 factories, fly to New Guinea, travel to Europe. He arrives unannounced at plants. The legend in khaki with 3 stars and pince-nez glasses. Workers recognize him instantly. He walks every assembly line, stops at machines, talks to workers. Sometimes takes controls to demonstrate better techniques. Why don't you reverse the arrangement of these 3 lines? He'll suggest to a plant manager. Work goes down the first line, up the second, down the third. No need to carry materials back twice. Managers stare and wonder, make notes, implement changes. Then Knudsen walks to the employee parking lot, checks workers' cars, points out worn tires, broken headlights, oil leaks. Get those fixed, he tells managers. Defense workers get priority on new tires and retreads. You don't want breakdowns keeping employees from work. Absenteeism can kill production as surely as material shortages. Knudsen visits 11 plants in a single day sometimes, 350 in his first 6 months, fixing bottlenecks, solving problems, spreading innovations. We're short on everything except bottlenecks, he jokes. The system is working. By summer 1942, the conversion is essentially complete. The automobile industry that produced 3 million cars in 1939 now produces 0 civilian vehicles. Instead, it produces guns, tanks, trucks, aircraft engines, ammunition, and thousands of specialized military components. 20% of all U.S. munitions production will come from the automotive industry, and the numbers are about to explode. May 4th, 1941. Berchtesgaden, Hitler's mountain retreat, 6 months before Pearl Harbor. 7 months before America enters the war. Hitler summons German industry leaders and Wehrmacht generals. He's furious. For 2 hours, he berates them about production failures, coordination disasters, resource bottlenecks. Germany is already spending 1/4 of its national product on munitions. 2/3 of all industrial investment goes to arms production, and it's not enough. Hitler senses they're falling behind, losing the production race. The Führer mentions Soviet factories as examples, but he's really thinking about America. December 7th, 1941. 4 days before Pearl Harbor. Hitler issues a decree. German industry must begin mass production on modern principles. Modern principles means American principles, Knudsen principles, assembly lines, interchangeable parts, volume production, driving down costs. Germany needs to adopt the methods of its future enemy. It's already too late. February 8th, 1942. Berlin. Hitler appoints Albert Speer as armaments minister. Speer is 46 years old, architect by training, Hitler's favorite designer. He planned the Nuremberg rally grounds, designed Reich Chancellery renovations. He knows nothing about running factories, but Hitler trusts him, and Speer promises a production miracle. He'll convert Germany's entire economy to all-out war production, tanks, planes, munitions in unprecedented quantities. The Third Reich will outproduce its enemies. Speer has advantages American planners can only dream of. He has formal power to order which factories produce what, can move materials and workers to whatever industries need them, can control wages and prices, has Goebbels's propaganda ministry to mobilize public opinion. Everything Washington's critics want for an American production czar, Speer has it. What Speer lacks is Knudsen's secret weapon. America's prodigious industrial base built around free enterprise. Speer is an architect, not an engineer. He doesn't understand mass production, can't lay out efficient factory workflows, doesn't grasp the principles that make Detroit work, and Germanic pride resists adopting American methods. German tank factories employ skilled craftsmen. Each vehicle is precision built. Quality over quantity. Traditional excellence. They'll never make enough. German aircraft workers follow the same philosophy. Superb engineering, meticulous assembly. Every plane a masterpiece, and production rates stay low. The German car industry, including Opel factories the government seized from General Motors, sits half idle throughout the war. The massive Volkswagen plant at Wolfsburg, designed to produce 200,000 vehicles annually, uses barely 1/5 of its capacity. There seem to be no plans at all, one worker recalls. Later, American bombing makes the question moot. But the fundamental problem isn't bombing. It's philosophy. Germany never fully adopts mass production. Meanwhile, German intelligence reports start flowing in about American production. Spring 1942. The numbers make no sense. American tank production, up 6-fold from 1941. Aircraft production, approaching 50,000 per year. Shipbuilding, Liberty ships launching weekly, soon to be daily. The analysts check their sources. The numbers must be exaggerated. American propaganda, summer 1942. The numbers keep climbing. Wehrmacht, logistics officers on the Eastern Front, start seeing American equipment. Lend-lease supplies flowing to Soviet forces. Trucks, aircraft, weapons. In North Africa, Rommel faces American-built tanks and planes. The intelligence isn't propaganda. It's real. Late 1942. German High Command requests updated estimates on American industrial capacity. The analysts return with shocking assessments. Americans grossly underestimated Soviet military-industrial capacity before Barbarossa. Now the same mistake is happening in reverse. Germany underestimated American capacity. The original projection, 18 to 24 months, for meaningful production, appears wrong. Americans are mobilizing faster than anticipated. How much faster? The analysts don't know yet. But the trends are alarming. Goebbels records in his diary Hitler's frustration. The Führer wants to expand the flak to a grandiose extent, wants so much anti-aircraft artillery that any penetration of the flak belt belonged to the realm of the improbable. It's a fantasy. Resources don't exist. Production capacity doesn't exist. But Hitler keeps prioritizing guns over fighters, keeps choosing visible defenses over effective ones. The strategic reality becomes clear. Germany started the race ahead, had years of rearmament, conquered Western Europe's industrial base, should have been unstoppable. But America's industrial potential was always larger. And once mobilized, the mathematics became inexorable. Speer will perform miracles. He'll double German arms production by 1944. Impressive achievement. But he'll do it by turning Germany and occupied Europe into a vast slave labor camp. 17 million foreign workers, including concentration camp inmates, devouring every shred of normal economic life. And it still won't be enough. The race was lost before it began. Germany just doesn't know it yet. December 31st, 1942. Washington, D.C. War Production Board Headquarters. Officials compile final production statistics for the year. When the accounting is complete, the numbers stagger everyone who sees them. Tanks, 3,964 in 1941. Now 24,754. More than 6 times previous year's production. In 1 year, aircraft, 19,290 in 1941. Now 47,873. Nearly 50,000 planes. The impossible figure Roosevelt demanded. Almost achieved in year 1. Small arms, 617,000 in 1941. Now 2.3 million. Nearly 4 times increase. Machine guns, 97,000 in 1941. Now 663,000. Almost 7 times more. Heavy bombers, B-17s and B-24s, 318 in 1941. Now 2,018. More than 8 times previous production. Aircraft engines, 136,000 produced. 20 million anti-aircraft guns, 2,042 in 1941. Now 92,000, 45 times more. Before 1942 ends, the United States is producing more war materiel than Germany, Italy, and Japan combined. The 3 Axis powers together cannot match American output. Let that sink in. 3 nations mobilized for total war since the mid-1930s, outproduced by 1 nation that entered full mobilization just 12 months ago. The numbers tell stories. Liberty ships, production accelerating toward 160 per month. In 1941, American shipyards launched 4 vessels per month total. Now they're launching dozens weekly. Henry Kaiser's Richmond shipyards set records repeatedly. November 12, 1942, SS Robert E. Peary launched 4 days, 15 hours, 30 minutes after keel laying. A complete 10,000-ton cargo vessel in less than a week. It's a publicity stunt. Most ships take weeks, not days. But it demonstrates what's possible. And Kaiser's yards maintain sustained production of multiple vessels simultaneously. By year's end, his facilities employ over 90,000 workers across 4 shipyards. K.T. Keller's Detroit tank arsenal hits stride. M3 and M4 Sherman tanks rolling off assembly lines in numbers that shock Army planners. The Army started 1939 with essentially 0 modern tanks. By end of 1942, they have thousands. At Willow Run, Ford struggles with B-24 production. Design changes keep arriving from the Army. Specifications shift. Engineering problems multiply. But Charlie Sorensen's team persists. By late 1942, production rates climb. The massive factory begins proving its potential. Across the country, similar accelerations multiply. General Electric spends $78 million of its own money expanding facilities. Federal government adds $120 million. GE produces propulsion plants for warships, turbo superchargers for aircraft, searchlights, military radios, radar sets, naval gun directors. They'll provide turbines for 10 aircraft carriers, 37 of 43 cruisers, 200 of 364 destroyers. General Motors converts almost 90% of its 41 operating divisions to war production. Sales shoot from $406 million in 1941 to $3.5 billion in 1943. GM's slogan changes to "Victory is our business." And business is extraordinary. GM produces trucks and tanks, manufactures Grumman fighters and torpedo planes at Eastern Aircraft, eventually delivers 7,546 Avengers and 5,920 Wildcats. Innovations flow from unexpected sources. GM discovers 8 Liberty ships can carry the same number of trucks disassembled as 100 ships carry them fully assembled. Solution: portable assembly plants. First installations support U.S. operations in Tunisia. More plants appear in Egypt. One ends up at the Burma Road's southern terminus. The most remarkable opens in Iran, Andimeshk. GM employees arrive in March 1942 to find hellish conditions: typhus, dysentery, temperatures hitting 140 degrees Fahrenheit. They build a factory in the desert. By summer, Andimeshk produces 2,500 military vehicles monthly. Assembly time per truck, under 30 minutes. Workers, 5,000 trained Iranians. Hand keys to Russian drivers who transport vehicles 800 miles through mountains to the Soviet border. Lend-Lease in action. By June 30th, 1943, when the Army takes over operations, GM has delivered 20,180 trucks to the Red Army, the ultimate capitalist corporation arming the communist state. September 18, 1942. Warren, Michigan, Detroit Tank Arsenal. President Roosevelt tours K.T. Keller's facility, part of a nationwide tour visiting defense plants. Roosevelt watches M4 Shermans roll off assembly lines, one every hour, soon to be one every 30 minutes. He sees workers, men and women, operating equipment, welding armor, installing engines. The president nods approval. The arsenal that broke ground in September 1940 is now America's tank production exemplar. Other factories copy its methods. The system works. By December 1942, the 18-month timeline is two-thirds complete. Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Current date, December 31st, 1942. 13 months elapsed. 5 months remain until the 18-month mark, June 1943. But already, the production rates suggest peak output might arrive even sooner, early 1943. 14 months, maybe 15. The flood is coming, February 23rd, 1943. Willow Run, Michigan. The 1 millionth Ford vehicle for military use rolls off an assembly line, somewhere in the Ford production network. It's symbolic, a propaganda moment, but it represents something real. The American automotive industry has fully converted to war production, and the numbers for 1943 are about to dwarf everything that came before. March 1943. Across America, production facilities hit sustained peak output. What happens over the next 9 months will change the war. Aircraft production, 85 Al-46 total for 1943. That's almost double 1942's output. Almost double what everyone thought was impossible. Heavy bombers, 2,618 in 1942. Now 9,616. B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators pouring from factories. 4 times previous year's production. These are the aircraft that will level German cities, destroy industrial capacity, win the strategic bombing campaign, Tanks, 29,495 produced. The M4 Sherman becomes the standard American medium tank. Reliable, producible, sufficient. German Tigers and Panthers are superior designs, but Germany produces them in small numbers. America produces Shermans by the thousands. Quantity has a quality all its own. Liberty ships, sustained rate of 160 per month. That's more than 5 ships every day, every single day. American shipyards launch 18,534 Navy vessels in 1943. Battleships, cruisers, carriers, submarines, destroyers, plus 16,000 landing craft. The specialized vessels needed for amphibious operations. Higgins boats, LSTs, the craft that will carry American forces to beaches in Sicily, Italy, France, and across the Pacific. Small arms, 2.3 million in 1942, now almost 7 million. Machine guns, 663,000 in 1942, now 830,000. Artillery shells, 693,000 tons in 1942, now 800,000 tons. Every category shows sustained acceleration. The comparison point that matters. In 1943, American war production is twice that of Germany and Japan combined. Twice, 2 times, double. The nation that entered full mobilization less than 2 years ago is outproducing empires that militarized for a decade. At General Electric, production reaches absurd levels. The company manufactures everything. Electric propulsion plants for 10 aircraft carriers, turbines for 37 of 43 cruisers, 200 of 364 destroyers, 400,000 electrically heated flying suits, 300 new types of electric lamps, turbo superchargers for thousands of aircraft, radar sets and gun directors, searchlights and military radios, even 5,000 bazookas, designed in a 24-hour marathon session and produced in 30 days. General Motors achieves its wartime peak. The company produces 10% of everything America makes for the Second World War. 10% of everything. That includes trucks and tanks, aircraft and aircraft engines, naval vessels and components, weapons and ammunition, instruments and equipment. GM's net sales, $13.4 billion over the war. Net profit, $623 million. Slender margins by peacetime standards, but astronomical volumes. At Willow Run, Ford finally hits stride. The massive factory, 3.5 million square feet under one roof, begins producing B-24 Liberators at scale, one bomber every 63 minutes at peak. Critics said aircraft couldn't be mass-produced. Sorensen proved them wrong. By war's end, Willow Run will produce 8,000 Standard 85 B-24s. Ford's other operations add thousands more vehicles, engines, components. The total output of Ford Motor Company exceeds the entire economy of Mussolini's Italy. One company outproduces a nation. Knudsen's rule of 3 proves accurate. Year 1 after production order, output triples. Year 2, output increases by factor of 7. Year 3, only limits are materials and labor. 1943 is year 2. The factor of 7 increase materializes exactly as predicted. America now operates with 25,000 prime contractors, 120,000 subcontractors, making products most never dreamed of producing, and making them in impossible quantities. November 28, 1943. Tehran, Iran. Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill meet for the first time. During dinner, Stalin raises his glass. To American production, the Soviet leader says, without which this war would have been lost. It's a stunning admission. The leader of world communism toasting American capitalism. But Stalin sees the reality. Lend-lease supplies keep the Soviet war effort alive. American trucks transport Soviet soldiers. American aircraft support Soviet operations. American food feeds Soviet civilians and troops. 1 out of every 4 meals Britons eat during the war comes from American Lend-Lease. Total Lend-Lease aid: $50 billion worth of equipment, supplies, food, and materials to allied nations. The American industrial machine isn't just arming American forces, it's arming the entire Allied coalition. By December 1943, exactly 14 months after Pearl Harbor, the conclusion is undeniable. America has hit sustained peak production. The 18-month estimate proved conservative. It took 14 months. The German High Command's projection of 18 to 24 months, off by 40–50%. The catastrophic intelligence failure is complete. April 1943. Wehrmacht High Command, Berlin. Intelligence officers brief Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel on Allied production capacity. The updated numbers shock everyone in the room. American aircraft production, approaching 85,000 for the year. American tank production, nearly 30,000. American shipbuilding, hundreds of vessels monthly. One officer asks the question everyone is thinking, how is this possible? The analysts explain. Americans didn't need 2 years. They needed barely 1. The mobilization timeline was wrong. The assumptions were wrong. Everything was wrong. Keitel reviews the implications. Wehrmacht forces in North Africa face overwhelming material superiority. Every week, more American equipment arrives. More tanks, more aircraft, more supplies. In the Atlantic, U-boats face expanding Allied convoy escorts. More destroyers, more aircraft, closing the gaps where submarines operate safely. On the Eastern Front, Soviet forces employ American trucks, American aircraft, American weapons, alongside their own production. And it's only getting worse. The flood is just beginning. German intelligence now estimates American war production at twice the combined output of Germany and Japan. Twice. The implications are devastating. Germany mobilized earlier, controlled Western Europe's industrial base, should have insurmountable advantages. But American workers are twice as productive as German counterparts, 4 times more productive than Japanese. America converted only 47% of economic output to war effort, compared to 60% for Britain, even more for Germany and USSR. Yet America outproduces everyone combined. How? The analysts understand now. Mass production, free enterprise, massive industrial base, worker productivity, continuous innovation, all the factors German planners dismissed or underestimated. Wehrmacht logistics officers see the proof in captured equipment. American trucks, reliable, standardized, produced in vast numbers. German trucks, diverse models, maintenance nightmares, never enough. American aircraft, modern designs, steadily improving, overwhelming numbers. German aircraft, excellent engineering, insufficient quantity. American tanks, adequate design, infinite supply. German tanks, superior design, chronic shortages. The Wehrmacht still relies heavily on horse-drawn transport. In 1943, while America fields over 3 million motorized vehicles for military use, 1 vehicle for every 2.75 Americans in uniform. Albert Speer performs miracles. By 1944, he'll double German arms production from 1941 levels. Impressive achievement. But it comes at catastrophic cost. 17 million foreign workers, including concentration camp inmates, pressed into slave labor. Normal economic life devoured. Resources extracted from occupied territories. Population pushed to starvation limits. Germany turns itself into a vast labor camp to boost production. And it's still not enough. Never enough. Speer lacks what Knudsen has. An industrial ecosystem built over decades. Mass production culture. Worker productivity. Continuous improvement. Free enterprise innovation. You can't copy those overnight. Can't decree them into existence. The system must evolve. Germany tried to build the system while fighting a multi-front war. Impossible. May 1943. Goebbels reviews production reports. The propaganda minister understands the mathematics now. Germany cannot win a production race against America, cannot outproduce them, cannot match their output, cannot sustain the material attrition. The only German hope is military genius compensating for material disadvantage, operational excellence defeating numerical superiority. It's happened before, Frederick the Great, Napoleon's early campaigns. But those historical examples involved smaller scales, and ultimately, even military genius failed against overwhelming resources. Goebbels doesn't write this in his diary, but he knows. The war is lost in the math. All that remains is determining how long until the end comes. June 1943. Detroit, Michigan, Willow Run facility and surrounding housing. Over 42,000 workers employed at Ford's bomber plant at peak. Most work 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week. They come from everywhere. Rural Michigan, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia. So many migrants from border states that jokes circulate. How many states in the Union? 46, because Tennessee and Kentucky are now in Michigan. Housing is insufficient. Workers live in trailer parks, boarding houses, overcrowded apartments. Some commute hours daily, but they come because wages are good, because work is available, because it's contributing to victory. Women join the workforce in unprecedented numbers, though not as many as propaganda suggests. More than 60% of American women stay home during the war. Higher percentage than Britain or USSR. But those who work make massive contributions. Rosie the Riveter becomes icon. Women operate machine tools, weld ship hulls, assemble aircraft components. At Kaiser's Richmond shipyards, Angela Clausen works as a welder. She keeps a diary. I found going from housework to welding a piece of cake. You don't have to get so dirty. You don't have to keep it up 8 or 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. The work is hard, dangerous, exhausting, but it's also empowering. Women earn good wages, develop new skills, contribute directly to war effort, and American production achieves its miracle while maintaining something unprecedented. Consumer goods production actually increases during the war. Output of civilian products is larger every war year than in 1939. Despite restrictions, despite rationing, despite material shortages. Americans in 1945 eat more meat than before Hitler invaded France, buy more shoes, use more gasoline, consume more electricity. The economy doubles in size. Wages rise 70%. This is the miracle Knudsen understood. America doesn't need to choose between guns and butter. Mass production provides both. Britain mobilizes 60% of economic output to war. USSR mobilizes even more. Both societies experience severe civilian deprivation. America mobilizes 47%, and civilian standard of living improves. Smallest percentage of male population enters military service among major combatants, yet produces the most weapons. How? Productivity, efficiency, scale, innovation, the compound effects of mass production. It's not all smooth. Labor strikes continue. In 1944, over 8.7 million man-days lost to strikes, enough to build 6 battleships or 14,344 B-24 bombers. Week before D-Day, 70,000 workers strike at 26 Detroit plants. Union disputes, wage negotiations, jurisdictional battles. Roosevelt and government officials are furious. How can workers strike during war? But the strikes barely dent production. The machine is too large, too distributed, too resilient. A few strikes at a few plants can't stop thousands of factories across the continent. The flood continues. By 1944, the problem isn't increasing production. It's managing the surplus. Too many weapons, too much equipment, more than forces can employ. Officials begin planning reconversion, shift back to civilian production, prepare for peacetime economy. The production monster Knudsen unleashed is so powerful it needs throttling back. Unprecedented in warfare. May 8, 1945. VE Day. Germany surrenders. June 1st, 1945. Dayton, Ohio. Wright Field Army Air Forces facility. Lieutenant General William S. Knudsen formally resigns from the Army. He's 66 years old. Exhausted. His health strained to breaking point. His daughter Martha remembers him sitting at home recently, tears streaming down his face. The radio announced German cities reduced to rubble. Hamburg, Lübeck, Cologne, cities he once knew, destroyed by bombers he helped build, the moral weight of industrial achievement. The day before his resignation, General Hap Arnold pins the oak leaf cluster to Knudsen's Distinguished Service Medal. Citation reads, "For exceptionally meritorious and distinguished services in the performance of duties of great responsibility." Undersecretary of War Robert Patterson tells the press his calculation. Knudsen's presence alone raised America's war production totals by 10%. 10% of the entire output, one man's contribution. But Knudsen did say, it wasn't him. It was the system, the network, the thousands of companies, and millions of workers. He just organized them. The final numbers tell the story. By war's end, America produced 88,010 tanks and self-propelled guns, 257,000 artillery pieces, 2.4 million trucks, 2.6 million machine guns, 41 billion rounds of ammunition, 320 Char 750 aircraft, averaging 170 per day since 1942. More aircraft than Soviet Union and Great Britain combined. More than Germany, Japan, Italy, Britain, and USSR combined. One nation outproducing the entire world. Through Lend-Lease, America armed not just its own forces, but its allies. $50 billion worth of equipment and supplies. Stalin's toast at Tehran wasn't flattery. It was recognition of mathematical reality. American production won the war. The timeline confirms it. Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Peak production achieved. February-March 1943. Elapsed time, 15 months. Not 18 months. Not 24 months. Not the 2 years German intelligence projected. 14 months. German High Command expected America to take 2 years to mobilize. American factories hit peak production in 14 months. The catastrophic miscalculation doomed Germany from the moment they declared war. They just didn't know it yet. June 11, 1945. Tinian Island, Pacific Theater. 10 days after Knudsen's resignation, a flight of specially modified B-29s arrives. Built at Glenn Martin's Omaha plant, the plant Knudsen saved with pair of hard-driving managers. These B-29s are different. Wider bomb bay doors, modified cockpit, extra room for technicians and special instruments. Tail number on one aircraft, 82. Crew names it Enola Gay. 2 months later, August 6, 1945, it drops an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, another modified B-29 bombs Nagasaki. Japan surrenders. The final products of American industrial might. Built in factories that didn't exist 5 years earlier. Using techniques perfected during mobilization. By workers trained during conversion. The 18-month timeline that seemed impossible became 14 months of reality and changed human history. The German intelligence assessment of December 11, 1941 sits in archives now. 18 to 24 months minimum for American mobilization. Conservative estimate based on historical precedent. Reasonable analysis given available information. Catastrophically wrong. Because Major Wilhelm Scheidt and his colleagues didn't account for Bill Knudsen, didn't understand mass production's compound effects, didn't grasp American industrial culture, didn't comprehend the subcontractor network's power, didn't recognize that free enterprise, once mobilized, becomes unstoppable force. They calculated based on World War I chaos. But 1941 wasn't 1917. Knudsen had spent 20 years perfecting the system. When war came, the machine was ready. It just needed activation. Pearl Harbor provided the spark. 14 months later, the world's greatest industrial achievement reached full power, and Germany drowned in the flood. The war was lost in the math before the decisive battles were fought, lost in the spreadsheets and production schedules, lost in the gap between 18 months and 14. Lost the moment they underestimated the sleeping giant. America didn't just mobilize. America mobilized faster than anyone thought possible, and produced victory in quantities no one imagined. The 18-month estimate was Knudsen's calculation. Reality beat it by 4 months. German expectations were off by 10 months minimum. In war, 10 months is eternity. In production, 10 months is apocalypse. The flood came early, and it never stopped.